75th anniversary, we will be giving you a tour talking about historical information from when it was first built in 1844 and more.
Welcome to Bury School. We would like to show you around the oldest parts of the building, including the well, which was covered in the mid-90s.
It is now right under our feet in the pond. The oldest part of our school is the schoolhouse, which was built in 1844. The bottom floor was sometimes used for classrooms, and you might not know that the top floor was used as bedrooms for teachers.
Our current DT room was originally used for a classroom for the older children. It was a small classroom, but it fitted 20 to 25 pupils in there, age of 14.
The oldest classroom at Bury is Kestrel's class, which we think was built in 1857. It was first used as an infant class, and it still is. They still have an outside door, but the desks were in rows, just like this photo from the 1950s.
In the 1960s, the old windows in Kestrel's class and the DT room were replaced because the children couldn't see their work properly.
We would like to show you the most recent parts of the school, which are Buzzard's class, Sparrowhawk's class, and the hall, which have all been built since the 1960s.
When the school was first built, the playground was where the hall is now. But in 1902, we were given more land by the Duke of Norfolk to use as a playground.
Later, we were also given our sports field. Since 2017, we have borrowed this amazing woodland from a neighbour to run our Bury Rangers lessons.
Before 1902, there were no toilets in school, but in 1902, the new earth closets were built.
When you went to the loo, it would pile up in a hole and you would cover it with earth. It would be cleared out at the end of the week and spread on gardens. The toilets were pretty much in the same place as they are now.
What did the school look like when you were here?
It was tiny in comparison with what you've got now. The room we're sitting in apparently was the classroom I was in. I remember sitting with my back to the window and looking towards the blackboard as it was then. I assume you still have blackboards, do you not have blackboards? No, you probably have computers and all sorts, but that's my memory of the school anyway.
Yeah, I remember the school, but not as many bright colours as you've got here. It was very plain colours, lots of wood panelling, wooden desks, wooden chairs, and we didn't have mobile phones in those days to interrupt interviews.
Yes, sorry.
But no, it was a great school. I remember it being a bit bigger than this because obviously I was little, I was only 5. The windows are very big because that's what gave the light in the classroom. We didn't have fluorescent lights like you've got now. So yeah, it's different, but it's great to be back here. Great memories.
Did you know Henry Charles Howard and his son Henry Granville Howard gave land for Bury School to be built? Richmond Powell's the first vicar at the time Bury School was built and the first head teacher for Bury School. We received £2 for Bury School to be built in 1844.
The payments by the children raised £10. The lowest wage for a teacher was £30. After 150 years, the Duke of Norfolk gave us more land for a playing field in the early 1970s.
Hannah Birch was a pupil at the school over 100 years ago. In the 1970s, she wrote her memories from Bury School. She remembers the one sound that broke the peace of the morning, the school bell. It was a large bell on top of the building. It was the job every child wanted to do, ring the bell. This was done by a big rope in the schoolroom. The first bell rang at 8:45, the second at 8:55. The pupils had to get into their places ready to march in on the stroke of 9. Many men in the field set their watches to the time of the school bell, and everyone missed the sound of it in the holidays. Scripture, arithmetic, reading, writing, history and maths were taught regularly. The girls also had needlework and the boys drill. Hannah recalls the terror of being punished for talking or moving. Teachers were always right and parents always agreed. In Hannah's early days, the teachers were Mr. and Mrs. Blord, and she remembers the rhyme that they used to sing. Mr. Blord is a good old man. He tries to teach us all he can, to read and write and to arithmetic, but he don't forget to give us a stick. When he does, he makes us dance, out of England into France, out of France into Spain, over the hills and back again.
Most children brought their lunch to school back then. There was no school dinner in those days. The children would perhaps bring bread and dripping, a jam tart or bread pudding, perhaps even mouldy cheese. They would sometimes go down to one of the big houses which would have lunch ready for them, almost like leftovers but cooked especially for them. The children would bring coffee to drink in the winter, and the teacher would heat it up for them in a saucepan.
Hannah left school in the 1900s, 119 years ago. The school has changed a lot since then. It would hardly be recognisable. The entrance of the school has changed many times. In the late 1890s, the entrance was about around the back door of Kestrel's. In the early 1900s, the entrance changed again to the DT room. Many classrooms and rooms have been added on since the late 1890s, and our school grounds have been enlarged. The clothing was different then. There was no school uniform. Each child would have hand-me-downs from older siblings. The girls were encouraged to bring in material from home to make their own clothes in needlework class. The water supply came from the well behind the school. The water was unlike ours and the well had a depth of 80 feet. They used rain butts as well, but some naughty boys used to make a hole in the bottom and let the water out. The culprits, if found out, would receive 10 strokes of the cane, 5 on each hand. Bury School was built in 1844, the well alongside it. In the school's early years, the water from the well was used to drink. Later on, they abandoned it, and in the 1990s it was covered up. A small room was built over the top of the well.
If you don't know what a census is, I'll tell you. A census is an important document which is full of information about who lives where. It says their names and their relation to the head of the house. As the census also mentions the people's occupation, where they were born, and along with their age.
It also refers to people who lived in the schoolhouse, such as William Johnson and Eliza Johnson in 1861. Some people enjoyed having the census taken, where others did not. In 1881, George Harris and Emily Harris, who were both teachers, Mary Harris, Baby Harris, and Emma Rundell all lived in the schoolhouse. The baby was only 1 day old, so it had no name. Emma Rundell was the midwife and nurse.
This map will show you how Bury School has changed through the years. The first map in 1876 shows a little bit of land given to the school by the Duke of Norfolk. It is the only house on the road, but in the second, in 1897, it was joined by Working Men's Club. In the third, in 1912, shows a small house next to the road. In the final 1972, Bury School has changed shape completely. That has also lots more houses on the road. It also has lots more land. They also got a new field. Bury School was one of many famous places in Bury.
The school punishment book is an ancient logbook. It started in 1907 and ended in 1974. It holds over 180 punishments. This special book has the name of the person who did the offence, the date of the offence, and the punishment. You may think it is cruel. That
Some of the offences were mundane, amusing and interesting. Here are some. Urinating over the fence, sticking a needle in a girl, stone throwing, theft and rudeness. In Victorian times, there are some similarities about the punishments, like we have to log our punishments, and we get sent to the head teacher and possibly get a phone call home. There's also an interesting letter from one of the students' parents asking for their son not to be punished if he doesn't learn his scripture.
What were punishments like when you were at school? Did you receive any punishments? If so, what for?
I was quite lucky because I didn't really misbehave too much, but at the time, Miss Stadswell was the head teacher, and the punishment was the slipper, which basically you were hit on the bottom with the slipper if you were very naughty. But I never achieved that, fortunately.
Tell me about some of the bad behaviour at school.
Oh, I don't remember much bad behaviour at school, but what we did do was we used to have people coming to the school and looking through the windows who had been here many years before. People that had come here from London during the war, and they would knock on the window or put their eyes up to the window and say, "Hello, can we come in?" And we used to get out the old punishment books, which you may have seen, and the old log books, and find out about them. I don't remember anybody being very, very naughty. I think once somebody stole a watch and then painted it, poster paints, and tried to pretend it was a different watch, but that was all.
Can you please tell us about some of the bad behaviour at school?
Bad behaviour wasn't as bad as it sounds when I tell you. Some children used to play truant at school, not come to school, but then they used to spend their time on the road looking in at us guys playing.
Didn't you have a bell on the top, and if you were late?
We had a bell, that's right, yeah, the bell that was always rung when somebody was late. We used to tie children to the railing sometimes so they couldn't come into class, so they were late. By the time they got untied, they'd be late for school. Sometimes the toilets were frozen, you couldn't go for a wee, so we used to go around the back and wee outside. You get told off for that. We used to pinch other teachers' food sometimes in the kitchen.
Andrew Aldridge lives in Bury Village. He went to school here in about the early 1950s until about the mid-1960s. As this year is our school's 175th anniversary, we decided to do some interviews on the people who used to come to our school. Andrew came in and he generously brought in and lent us some of his old school books, which we would like to show you. He brought in 2 English books that started on the 8th of June 1961 until the end of May 1962. Andrew also brought in a maths book that started on February 1961 until November 1961. From looking at his maths book, we can tell they actually learned about some of the same and similar things we learn about today. His English books, however, are slightly different to how we use our English books now. We aren't entirely sure, but we think they used them a bit like a diary.
There were a lot of entries, but they didn't start with Dear Diary. They started with things like this morning, yesterday, and a really common one was last night. Back when Andrew was at school, these books were very different to ours today. The size was a lot smaller than ours now, and they were the size were a lot smaller than ours now, and they were supplied by the West Sussex County Council Committee.
Imagine listening to something that was written over 100 years ago. Imagine looking at something that hasn't been touched for nearly a century. Imagine looking at pages that have been marked with boxing over time. Now stop imagining. We have Bury School's first logbooks. June 2nd, 1898. General Report copy. Bury National School. The school is making good progress in spite of some hindrances during the past year. The infants class was seen at a disadvantage in the absence of its regular teacher, but is apparently continuing to do well. Staff 1898 to 99. S.J. Houghton, Certified Mistress. A. Houghton, Article 68.
That was the first entry from the earliest logbook we have from Bury School.
Logbooks are like a journal, written by a head teacher when something important has happened, even if it was just the vicar coming in to teach scripture, which could be quite boring to read about, but happened a lot.
There were also more eventful things as well, like on April 29th, 1925.
That was the first entry from the earliest logbook we have from Bury School. Logbooks are like a journal, written by a head teacher when something important has happened, even if it was just the vicar coming in to teach scripture, which could be quite boring to read about, but happened a lot. There were also more eventful things as well, like on April 29th, 1925. There was no school yesterday as Miss Haynes met with an accident on her way to school.
While cycling, she collided with a motor van at a corner and is suffering from shock and slight concussion.
I was also unable to come. AZW. The most recent entry from the last logbook of Bury School is on Friday 18th December.
Break up for the holidays. And so ends this term, and so ends this logbook.
The register books which holds information about the people that came to Bury School. The first ever recorded child in the book was Elsie Jo Sadler. Her date of birth is 1st of January 1909, and the registers hold more information about her, like her parents' name, her address, and where she went when she left the school. The last child in the book in the register was Freya Ellington in 2005.
The 150th anniversary happened at Bury School in 1994. They celebrated by going. They went on a boat trip to Littlehampton for the annual treat.
Sometimes they drove down and sometimes they went in a boat. They fitted 48 children on the boat. It took them 4 hours to get to Littlehampton and they went on the old Bury boat.
When we were having the 150th anniversary, so that's 25 years ago, I was here then, and we took the whole school by coach down to Arundel, and a teacher called Mrs. Rooney, who I worked with, knew one of the boatmen who worked on the River Arun, and we took the whole school on his boat, and he sailed us up the river as far as Houghton Bridge at Amberley. And we all got off the boat, and then we had to cross the bridge very carefully because it's very narrow. And then we got to the other side of the river, and we walked all the way along the footpath on the other side of the river. And then we had some governors who had got a boat, and we were trying to reenact the Bury Ferry, which is, I hope, still on the school badge. The lady with the boat?
Yeah.
And the big pole, is that still on the school badge? So we were trying to reenact her job, which was to ferry people from one side of the river across to the village. So a few at a time, we put children into the boats and sailed them across the river to the side where the church is. And once we'd got the whole school across the river by boat, then we walked all the way back to school. And that is one of my favourite memories.
Do you know, in 1878, a teacher called Miss Harris, also known as Sophia Harris, fell down the well. She died at the age of 44, and she was found by her 11-year-old daughter Mary. Despite the fact that people rushed to help, she was sucked down the well, unconscious and with a fractured skull. Her husband mistakenly lowered her even further, and she drowned. We found her death certificate and a newspaper report about this. From this day forward, no one really knows the truth of what happened. Some believe that she slipped, and others believe that she was pushed. The well is now buried underneath the pod, which can be found between Kestrel's class and Sparrowhawk's class.
This book shows poems and stories made by the children of Bury School. You're about to see the best of them.
We interviewed previous pupils, governors, teachers and anyone who had any relationship with this school.
Can you tell us your name?
My name is Richard Williams.
And I'm his brother. My name is Roger Williams.
What were the punishments like when you were at school? Did you receive any? What for?
I was never punished. I was a good boy, I think. I mean, bear in mind we were in a children's home, so it was all a little bit alien to us as to where we were and what we were doing. So we were quite reserved, to say the least.
Yeah, I don't remember any punishments given or even threatened if we were bad, because we weren't bad children, we were good children. I believe some punishments were given, but not in my time here. It was a great place to be, and some great memories for a 5-year-old child.
Andrew Aldridge.
Andrew Aldridge. And what years were you here?
I was here 1954 to 1961.
Oh, okay then. So
I came here when I was 4. The 2 teachers that were here then were 2 spinsters called Miss Gregory and Miss Holdrup.
oh, okay. I think I've heard of this.
You've heard those names before. And they ran the school. It was a church.
Miss Snowdrop.
No, it's Holdrup.
Oh.
Holdrup. And she was a lovely woman. Miss Gregory died here, but they ran the school.
Oh, okay. How old were you when you left? You were 4 when you started.
10.
10. Oh, okay.
What did the children wear when you were at school?
We had school uniforms. Not everybody had school uniforms, but we had a basic grey trousers, grey shorts, much as not dissimilar to what you've got now. But a lot of the families couldn't afford school uniforms.
Yeah.
You know, farming families, and people were a lot poorer then. You know,
Yeah.
my mum and dad had the pub, so they had money.
What is your name?
My name is Hazel Crode, but it used to be Rough when I came to the school.
What was your most amusing memory from your time at Bury?
Really, the 2 teachers at the time, who were 2 ladies, one was Miss Gregory, who lived at the school, she lived above the school, and Miss Holdrup, her assistant. They were lovely teachers, and it was just very fond memories at that time when I was 5. And also, I can remember playing in the sports field, running, because I used to love running and high jump then.
Do you have anything you would like to tell me, or?
Yeah, I have got a few little things here. One of them was practicing over the road in the playing field for sports. I used to love running, and I always represented the school at Ryden County. And I used to come to school here with a friend called Andrew Aldridge, who you know, and he always used to say he could never catch me. It was a joke, you know, at the time. But it was always happy times here. Had some lovely friends, met some nice friends who were at Clifton House at the time, a girl called Margaret Cooper. I remember her fondly. And Andrew and Dudley Maynard, Barry Barnes, lots of the local names, you know. Yeah. Happy times. Very happy. Yeah. And I can remember walking to school with Mum in the mornings, and she'd always pick me up in the afternoon, and we'd collect wildflowers walking home and on the hedgerow. Always remember picking wildflowers, cowslips particularly. Great times.
Okay, thank you for your time.
Thank you, it's a pleasure.
Hello, my name is Gavin Ross. I was a pupil here in 1970 to about 1976. In fact, I've actually got a picture. I think I was about 8 at the time when that was taken. And my sister also came to the school as well. She was about 2 years older than me.
What is your most amusing memory from your time at Bury?
Amusing. We always had a swimming pool, and we used to get changed in the changing rooms, and there was the tarmac playground, but to get to the swimming pool we had to run by the side of it, there was a fence, and we used to run up the side of the fence, and they had a sycamore tree with what we call certain times of the year the helicopters that used to throw up in the air and they'd spin down. I always remember all being dressed in our trunks and swimming costumes, running up the side of the fence there, trying to throw these things in the air.
I'm Diana Rousel, and I've been involved with Bury School from the early 70s, I think 1973, when I was first a governor, right through to the 90s, and I've taken an interest ever since.
What is your favourite memory from school?
Oh, I think I've got lots of favourite ones. A lot of the Christmas plays were great fun, and it was always lovely to see one's own children and everybody else's, and the teachers all larking around and having fun. I think those are some of the favourite memories, but lots of the outdoor things as well.
What is your name?
I'm Lynette Leeson, and I was a parent governor at the school from about 1998 through to 2005, and I had two sons who were at the school, Alistair Hares and Matthew Hares.
What is your most amusing memory from your time at Bury?
At Bury, I think it's a lovely, happy family, and everybody all works together having some great times. One of the great amusing things was when we were doing the tree planting on the field. We planted a lot of the trees around the edge of the field. I suppose that's about 15, 20 years ago now, and as you know, they're growing quite big. So, and also discovering the rare flowers on the field, and it was great to show everybody the rare beer orchids and what a special school it is to have beer orchids.
What year did you start Bury School?
I didn't start, but my sons started in 1998 when Alistair Hares was 5 years old, and he joined in the kindergarten, and it was quite unusual because he was the only boy in the year group, but it didn't matter because the nice thing about Bury is that you all play together in the field, and it's one big group. It doesn't really matter, and certainly until he got much older when he was playing football, and it was a rather small football team that he then decided to go and join Aaron Colts because there wasn't enough for a football team at the school.
What was a typical school day like?
Well, I came and did the drop-offs and the pick-ups, but I used to come in and also help with the reading. So I used to come in for the year 1s and 2s and help with their sort of reading. And then in the evenings I used to come back and go to governors' meetings when we used to decide what priorities the school was going to have. And at that time we needed to interview for a new head teacher. Jane Wells was moving on to another school, and I was able to interview and bring Christopher Todd into the school, and he was a great head.
Okay, so what's your name and when did you come here?
Okay, my name's Angela Brown, and my children, Sam and Oliver Brown, were here from 1997 to 2005.
What is your most amusing memory from your time at Bury?
Okay, so amusing was, because I was chairman of fundraising, we had to do some, we organised 2 big events to raise lots and lots of money. We were raising money for the swimming pool and then for the garden out here, and we had these things called auctions of promises, and we asked lots of local people if they donate things for us, and then we had an evening in the village hall. We had a proper auctioneer, and the auctioneers have someone called a porter who helps carry out the auction. And we had one of the old schoolboys as a porter, and two of the lots in the auction were manure from Mr. Hughes's farm. And we started the bidding for it, and there were people in the hall going, yes, yes, you know, £20, £20. And then William, the porter, said, excuse me everybody, excuse me, we have an international phone call here coming in from France. And one of the ladies that I work for, because I'm a gardener, she was very interested in Mr. Hughes's manure, but she was in France. So we then introduced an international phone call saying, yes, and we've got £40 from France. Back in the hall, £50, and I can't remember what it went for, but it had everybody in stitches that we had this, you know, phone call from another country because they were so desperate to get hold of Mr. Hughes's manure. So anyway, that was probably one of my funniest memories.
My name's Malcolm Laverty. I was here in 1989 until 1997, and I was the head teacher of the school. And I moved here from London, and I moved in next door to the schoolhouse because I couldn't afford to live in London, and I saw this job with a school that had a house for the head teacher, and I used to walk in there, in the door over there, every morning to come to work. It took me 10 seconds to get to work every morning.
What is your favourite memory from school?
Well, when I came here, as I said earlier, I lived in London and I didn't feel I knew much about the countryside. So I used to spend a lot of time up in the woods there in a place called Poorgate Copse. And my favourite memory is taking the children up there on a Friday evening to wait for the badger to come out of the badger hole. And my favourite memory is listening to a little girl, her name's Beth Duddy, sitting there, and how her breathing changed when out of the dark came the badger's head, and she started to go, and I realised that was a very special moment. I think that's my favourite memory from all the years I was here.
Hello, my name's Thomas Moore. I was appointed head teacher at Bury Primary School in January 2017. I am really lucky that we've got an amazing, rich history here at Bury, and it's something that we've been able to tap into. I feel privileged to be here in its 175th anniversary. We've got a fantastic community spirit. We've had lots of ex-pupils, ex-staff, ex-governors, ex-head teachers, all coming to join in to celebrate our 175 years, and all getting to share their memories of the amazing things that have happened at their time in school. It's been brilliant bringing that to life for the children here who are learning about the previous 175 years, and actually getting to talk to children who were sat in their classroom some 50 years ago. We are also really lucky we've got the original log books and punishment books, and the children have been fascinated looking at the different things that children have got in trouble for. I'm delighted to say that I haven't had to tell anybody off for urinating over the wall in my time at the school. Fingers crossed that doesn't happen any time in the future. I'm really looking forward to the fact this is the 175th year now. I want to be coming back when we get to our 200th anniversary and seeing our children coming back and sharing the amazing memories they're making now with the children that are here in the future. It's a fantastic school, and I feel really lucky to be part of its history.